assumptions are just stories or a version of what we think might be happening, which is very rarely what is actually happening. You know, we make assumptions so that we can just have shortcuts and we can put things in tidy boxes. Oh, this must be this and this must be this. And the problem is so often that's about past experience. And so we carry that past experience forward with us in attempts to keep ourselves safe. Yeah, unfortunately, big sweeping statements about, you know, men are this way or women are this way or I am not capable of that or whatever that story is limiting, and it limits the relationship or it limits what we choose to do with our lives or things we choose to say yes to, unfortunately.
Hey, I'm Osama and this is the NAİMİ STUDİO podcast. Our mission is to help people cultivate meaning through creativity. We're a small team right now, just a father and son, currently focused on building an archive of unique visual pieces inspired by conversations with people from all walks of life. The pieces you see behind me were inspired by today's conversation and were created in an attempt to distill some of the key insights that emerged. Our hope is that they'll act as visual metaphors or prompts to help you consider the relevance of these insights in the context of your own life and the meaning that you experience. Our guest today is Emily Plater. In the handful of times that Emily and I have interacted, she's always brought a delightful mix of care and curiosity to the conversation. She listens intently, stays open, and asks thoughtful questions without judgment. And all of this continues naturally into her professional life as a counsellor, among other things. Since filming the podcast, Emily's continued to support people across a wide spectrum, from members of the general public to individuals within His Majesty's prison system. And I know that Emily's always looking for new ways to help people, so please feel free to reach out. In this conversation, we explore the subtleties of human connection and relationship building. We talk about how expressions of love can sometimes get lost in translation, and how digital intimacy might be amplifying our insecurities. We also talk about what it means to live with a neurodiverse brain in a neurotypical world, and I found it particularly fascinating to consider how we might move from self-doubt to self-understanding and eventually shared understanding with our fellow human beings. All of this and a lot more, so let's get into it. Emily Plater, welcome.
Thank you.
Should we start off by saying why we're having Veggie Moussaka?
Sure. I mean, I wish I had more of a robust answer to that. I just love Veggie Moussaka. And I guess I'm vegetarian, and I think it's great for people to know that there are delicious vegetarian options. Not that people should not be eating meat, but that there are these options that are absolutely delicious.
When was the first time that you had it?
Probably when I was young. Luckily, my mum was a very experimental cook, so we would have dishes from all over. Yeah, I remember vividly lasagnas and moussakas.
So the layered feel.
Exactly.
There's something so satisfying and enticing about anything layered. I don't know. You can almost see the flavor distribution, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. And you got lots of things, textures going on and lots of different flavors happening. Yeah.
One of the things that I'm hoping is good about the moussaka is when you cut into it, you almost know immediately if it is going to be good. Do you know what I mean? Like just the feeling of like the tactile resistance or whatever it is, especially with moussaka, because you've got like the slightly more dense potatoes. Well, actually, you've got like the spongy, gooey cheese first thing.
Yeah.
Then the density. And then all of the mixture. So I don't know. That's what I think about when I think about moussaka.
Love it. No, I'm really excited.
Yeah, sorry to keep it from you. It's just sort of off in the distance.
Yeah, it's like the carrot at the end. Of the stick.
All right, enough about food. We
can come back to that.
We can come back to it. To start off with, it might actually just be worth giving some context of, I guess, how we how we first met, like how we ended up doing this in the first place.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I love that story. So my version of it is that I arrived at Together Culture. I was going to be doing an evening session with NSEC, or maybe we'll talk more about that. And I saw you speaking with an older gentleman, and the level of listening was just really impressive. So I was just eavesdropping, pretending to be on my phone. And then after the conversation ended, I just felt this need to say to you, I was just really impressed by your level of listening. And you said, from my memory, thank you, that means a lot. You know, that's the kind of work I want to be involved in, that involves good listening.
It was a very, very timely compliment.
Yeah, good.
Thank you so much for saying it. Yeah, it was an amazing feeling, actually. It's often, it's always wonderful when people say positive things, but if it feels almost necessary, like you almost kind of needed to hear it at a certain time.
Yeah.
That was certainly that moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm incredibly grateful that you did actually reach out, and that you were there as well.
Oh.
And I think from my perspective, that is what made me quite excited to actually speak to you, because it feels like, and you mentioned that you were going on your own journey in counselling, and the first thing that comes to mind is, I guess, how much crossover potentially in the character qualities that you would need, the skills that you need to develop to be a good counsellor, or just to be generally someone who is good at engaging in conversation with other people, how much that crosses over into this domain.
Yeah.
So I am super excited to just learn as much as I can, and to hear your perspective, because it just seems like you're someone, I'm making an assumption here, but I think I'm fairly confident in this, that you seem to be someone who knows what to say to people at the right time, or at least that's the that's the experience that I've had. Very limited experience so far.
I guess I'll just say, in response to that has taken a long time to sit with myself and think, does this need to be said? And who am I saying this for? And to just kind of trust what comes up, particularly if it's a compliment, for example. Give that compliment. We don't do that enough in this country. If you see something that you're impressed with, say it.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It not only helps the other person, I think it is also, you're experiencing the good in yourself as well. Like, I think everyone wins, basically, if we can just be more positive and share the positivity. Because you do sit there and positive thoughts will come to mind, but it is putting that into action and actually saying something, which is the important piece. Yeah.
Especially when it's grounded in maybe a value. Like, I guess I'm comparing it to saying to somebody, oh, I really like your hair. Like that's a nice thing to say, and that can feel true and real. But when you're complimenting something, it goes a bit deeper than that. It's nicer.
Yeah. And if it's something that they can control, I guess, as well, or develop, or
exactly.
Because I guess if someone has nice hair, I guess you can control your hair to some extent. I'm evidence of that. But in a large extent, it's not in your control. Whereas trying to be a good person, or trying to exhibit the values that showcase the best of human nature. Yeah.
And I guess also to say, I don't always get it right. That is the risk that you take when you speak. You might not always get it right. People might not always like what you say. But there's a danger in not speaking, not saying what you see, particularly in the counselling room. There's a lot that you're picking up, and some of it's really relevant to mention, or to comment on, or to explore more.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, one of the things I'd love to go into is when you hear someone say something which they might not have said it in a way that seems as though it's this like bold statement. They might make a passing comment, but if you pick it up as something that actually is rooted in something that's destructive or negative, having the confidence to just politely call someone out on it and just say, hey, I've heard people say this before. It's like, I know you might not have like meant it in this way, but this is kind of how it came across. And
absolutely.
I just thought I'd flag it for you.
Yeah.
Essentially. It's not like I'm calling you out in a combative way. It's actually for your benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're onto something there. This kind of kind challenge, which is really necessary in the counselling room. It's, in my mind, it should be a place where you feel safe and comfortable and free to say whatever is coming to your mind. But people are not there for a reassuring chit chat. It is work, and it involves challenge. And that's what's so daunting about counselling. That's why I admire anyone who comes to counselling, because you have to be ready to grow, and that involves a bit of challenge and exploring things that are not working or worked for a while and are not working anymore. The things that we actually don't really want to see because they're pretty inconvenient and require some change.
Well, maybe we can go into that. I wonder if, since we're almost at the precipice, I guess, it might be worth just sharing a little bit about how you, I guess, the journey that's taken you to where you are now, or at least what compelled you to become a counsellor.
Sure.
And what did that sort of involve? What was that journey like?
Yeah. So I guess in a way, I've often been somebody people have come to talk. Sometimes complete strangers will tell me all about their lives. So I've often been the listener. I kind of played that role in my family a little bit. I played that role in friendships. I also just find people fascinating and human behavior fascinating. So when I was younger, I was a little bit lost as to what to do career-wise. I was in hospitality for a long time, partly because that gave me a bit of a place to kind of observe people in action. So I tried a lot of different roles, and none of them really fitted for me. But what I kept coming back to was counselling in my mind. But I always thought, no, it'll be too hard. I'm not sure I can separate myself from other people's stuff. I'm not sure I want to hear about, trauma all day long. But I just kept coming back to it. And so I just kind of had to follow that in a way, or explore it at least, and see if I was cut out for it. Yeah, the more I learned, the more I loved it. And the more I saw how important counselling is for so many people, and myself included. There is a kind of joke in the counselling world that people who become counsellors have very much needed that for themselves. So, cannot deny that it's been really, to receive counselling has been so important for me, to move me forward in lots of stuck areas.
I mean, if it genuinely sounds like it's in some ways it's a calling, or at least you were so compelled to do it. You returned to it.
Kept coming back. Yeah, kept coming back to it.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said there about purpose, I guess, underlying. But yeah, what's the difference between counselling and therapy, or I guess other methods of supporting people, I guess, in a much broader sense?
Yeah, they're often used quite interchangeably, aren't they, counselling and therapy? And my understanding anyway is that therapy is really psychotherapy. That requires a psychology degree usually, and a certain level of training, and people who come to see a psychotherapist often have quite long-term work that involves a lot of analysis. Whereas counselling is shorter term, often is often led more by the client, I think. So that's my understanding. Other people might have a different take on that. But there are many forms of many ways to work therapeutically, I guess. whether that's art therapy or music therapy, dance therapy. And I think many of us need a combination. You know, I think it doesn't fit for us to just go to one form of therapy and think that that's going to fix me. I would also like to just really state that we are never fixed and we should never go and seek anything in order to be fixed.
Which is quite reassuring, I think.
Yeah.
But it is just a journey that unfolds and it continues to.
Yeah. And continues to, exactly. It's a never-ending exploration, and that can be exciting if we frame it in that way.
Yep. And what drew you to, or I guess, could you speak about what kind of counselling you offer and what drew you to that type of counselling or that type of therapeutic support?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I work particularly with men, not exclusively, but I work particularly with men, and I have tried to figure out why that is, why I enjoy working particularly with men. I think, you know, I have a brother, and my brother and my dad, that, you know, we had lots of discussions together. I was a bit of a tomboy. I had a lot of male friends. I think I just feel quite comfortable in male company. And I think, you know, hearing statistics about male suicide, about the men's mental health crisis. Well, I mean, it's people. There is a mental health crisis generally, but I think I'm also not overanalyzing it. That's what I feel drawn to, and so that's what I'm following. And so I work with men. I hire several rooms, so there's like face-to-face seated therapy, but that doesn't work for everybody. Some people find that quite intense. I have quite an intense stare sometimes without meaning to. So I also offer walk and talk therapy, which works for some people, where, you're in a more natural space. You're alongside each other. I really like this alongside idea.
I was going to say as well, it feels like, you know, when you were making some distinctions between therapy and counselling and also thinking about this occupation of physical space, like it's quite like the dynamics or the dynamics of the relationship that you have with the client, or I guess just generally how that, I don't think power dynamic is the right word, but there's something about that which feels incredibly important with regards to the type of information that you're willing to share, or like, I guess the objective of the session.
Yeah.
And I'd imagine a lot of that, you know, you can learn or is taught, but I'd imagine a lot of it is also intuitive. Yeah, I wondered if you could speak about that, I guess how you think about the dynamic of the situation and how you flex to different people's emotional needs, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, as you say, some of that is just quite intuitive, so maybe trickier to speak about. But I guess maybe it's important to mention here, people who are looking for a counsellor should pay attention to that level of fit. You know, do I feel comfortable? Because there's sometimes the fit is not right. And, you know, just because somebody is a counsellor doesn't mean they'll be the right counsellor for you. So do trust yourself when it comes to that. Yeah, how do I feel around this person? Do I feel like I can talk to them? Do I feel judged? You know, counselling should be a non-judgmental space where anything you say goes, really, unless there's a kind of risk of harm that's talked about, or anything that's illegal that needs to be flagged.
Does that go both ways as well? In
Absolutely.
a sense, like you're trying to decide whether this is the right partnership.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like any working relationship, like sometimes it's not a great fit. I haven't experienced that so far, but I'm always ready for that. You know, that there's something that we learn about in our training that's called transference and counter-transference. So, you know, somebody could remind you of your Aunt Susan, and that's got nothing to do with that person. But whenever you're around them, you think of your Aunt Susan, and that's no one's fault. But it might get in the way of the work because they remind you of an ex-boyfriend or a ex-manager or whoever that is, you know, and that goes for me as well. If I meet somebody and there's something that gets triggered in me, I can't do good work because I'll be distracted by that.
That's fascinating. So it's quite reliant on having a blank slate in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, we're human and that's never fully possible. But yeah, as a counsellor, keeping your own stuff in check is really essential.
That's a lot to think about at the same time, right? Like you're helping someone with their journey, but you're also like having to manage, I guess, yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly right.
So yeah, maybe we could explore what it takes to become a counsellor, or at least like how you're taught to deal with all the complexities that this kind of work brings.
Yeah, so I mean, my training was it was about 4 years in the end, part-time. I was trained. We touched on all the different areas. There's lots of different types of counselling, and I was humanistically trained, so it's quite open, let's say. So you're kind of, whatever the client brings is what you deal with. It's not particularly structured or in the way that CBT can be. It's not very goal orientated. It's just seeing what comes up. But yeah, lots of different ways to train. Essential that you have your own counselling as part of that journey. Yeah, you shouldn't really expect somebody else to come and be seeing you if you haven't done the work yourself and if you haven't experienced what it's like to be a client. Essential to have supervision. So I have a wonderful supervisor that asks me incredible questions that help keep me on track. So you're always keeping your ethics in mind. How, you know, am I aligned? Am I missing anything? Because sometimes it does take an outside person to give feedback on things you might have missed. We all miss things. And obviously continued professional development, that there's always more to be learning. And that's quite daunting to think there's so much I don't know. There's so many ways of working that I haven't explored yet, and wanting to do the best thing for the client. And each client requires something slightly different from you, or different things will unlock something. So it's just trying to be in tune and not being afraid to experiment.
I'd imagine that there's quite a delicate balance there of like trying to get more experience, like in-field experience of like actually speaking with people, but then also you're then exposing yourself to a lot more heavy conversation.
Yeah.
So I guess what are the sort of different ways to advance your skill? What are the kind of resources or how do you spend your time outside of a session with someone advancing your counselling skills?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, there are often key themes that come up with a client. You know, there are maybe some core things to be looked at. So for example, if attachment seems particularly relevant to one client, you know, I have some level of knowledge about attachment, but I will go and read a little bit more, refresh my memory of attachment theory, or luckily, I mean, the internet is an amazing place. YouTube is an incredible place for learning from experts and having people break down more complex theories into ways that are easily digestible and ways that you can relate that to somebody else. But yeah, that's something I love to do, is to keep learning and to keep exploring. So yeah, a lot of my free time is just continuing that reading, going to workshops, listening to podcasts. Yeah, it's this difficult place of never feeling like you're fully equipped, but just trusting that you're equipped enough.
That's a key word there, is enough. I think.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating as well about you mentioned that the internet is a wonderful place, and I'd certainly agree. It's also infuriating that there is so much information out there that is so accessible, and it often feels like the answers are like out there. It's just that it's very difficult to ask yourself the right question. I think obviously that, that extends to any type of challenge that you're facing, like internally, or just any challenge that you're facing over the course of your life. There is a way for you to find the right information, but you just don't know what that way is.
Yeah.
And can be incredibly helpful to seek external perspective. But why? Like you're the person who's living your life. You should be able to, know more about your life than anyone else. And you can only learn so much about someone else's life in a very short amount of time, in a session, for example. So yeah, I'm just trying to it is something that I find, just generally fascinating. Like, why is it that we need other people to help us work through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and is one of the reasons a lot of people don't seek counselling, where they think, well, I can do this on my own. I can just buy some books, or I can, but we all have blind spots. I know I definitely do, and we need each other. It doesn't have to be a counsellor. Sometimes it's a great friend, sometimes it's a partner, a colleague. We need these mirrors, these people who can be a mirror for us and say, look, I noticed this about you, or I noticed that something that you fall into a lot that I see is detrimental to you. If only we could do that for ourselves always. And sometimes we can, there's a lot of self-help stuff that's incredible. And these prompt questions to really dig deeper and say, okay, what's going on here? But I think often a combination is necessary. We do need other people to, I guess it's back to that calling out or that challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So again, related to this is the balance between helping people arrive at their own revelations versus giving advice.
Yeah.
And certainly with people who are very close to you, friends, family, that kind of thing, it can be very tempting to immediately offer advice. Certainly if you do see them fall into the same holes again and again. And you kind of just want to say, hey, just don't do this, or do this instead. Or, you sort of leap to the action, you leap to the outcome. I wonder if there's something to be said for subtly trying to help people reach their own revelations, because then they get their own sense of agency over their lives.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, what was talked about a lot in our training was, the client is the expert in their own life, as you were saying, and we are there to be a space for exploration and challenge occasionally. But no one learns from being forced. We all have this quite natural defense that comes up when we feel attacked. So that's why exploration is a great way to support people to come to their own conclusions and find their own answers, because that's what sticks. Yeah, that's what sticks, is when there's an insight that feels true for people or feels useful in some way.
Yeah. You mentioned prompt questions, the questions that might actually help us if we asked ourselves them on a regular basis. Are they the kinds of questions that, you would often use in a counseling situation? Do you adapt them in a certain way because of that context? Or I guess I'm curious what those prompt questions might be.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that could be an interesting, I'm going tangenting in my mind. But
tangents are good. We like tangents.
Yeah. I think so. In the counselling room, those questions come quite naturally in reference to what's being talked about. So I don't have kind of stock questions particularly that I ask.
That makes sense.
But I guess, if I were to ask some questions, it would be, what's big for you at the moment? What feels really present? What are the kind of top 4 areas that you're thinking about? And where do you feel high emotion? Because where we feel high emotion is where there's information, things we feel angry about, things we feel sad about, things we feel excited about. These show us where where our values are, really, in a sense. You know, when we get angry about something, you know, there's a boundary's been crossed for us, or something we care about is being challenged. So yeah, there's information there.
And it can cloud your judgment as well.
Oh yeah.
Especially certain emotions like anger, for example, will it's almost like everything then becomes through the lens of that anger.
Yeah.
Do you find that people are like generally self-aware enough to like know what those big things are? Like, because that's part of the challenge, right? Like with asking yourself the right questions, it's like, what am I feeling?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is going on?
Exactly. And a lot of us are not used to tapping in and asking those questions. We just go about our daily lives, and we see things through our own lens, and we don't we're not always used to that level of questioning. You know, what's really going on for me here, and why am I so annoyed when she doesn't put the lid on that, you know, whatever it is. So yeah, I think that's again why counselling is a great space to do that kind of exploring, because it is hard to do that ourselves sometimes. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's such a powerful tool in people's self-development and management of their own lives. And I imagine it's also, well, we can go into this later, I guess, but like the reward that you must feel to like actually help people through those kind of situations must be amazing. Because especially if someone has been, you know, stuck in whatever way for a long time, to help them through that is such a testament to like human nature, but also testament to your skills, and I guess also the client's willingness to change and openness.
Absolutely. Yeah, that should not be underestimated. And as much as it feels so rewarding, as you say, it you know, when there is movement and change and people are speaking differently about themselves and their lives and making different decisions, that, you know, credit to the client really for showing up, for taking on board what's happening in the sessions, for being brave enough to make those changes. So it's always a collaboration, you know, that's what's great about it. It's not just like a top-down thing. It's exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Keep coming back to dynamics because I feel like that's such an important part of this. And like finding the right kind of people in your life. Like if you don't see counseling, just finding or cultivating the right kind of relationship with the people around you, or, you know, the people that you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
Why is it that we don't, or maybe some people do, but I guess the majority of people don't actively try to shape their relationships, not just with, you know, their significant other, but even just generally the people that you spend the most time with. Is that like a cultural thing? I don't know. Like, how do we generally as a society feel more comfortable shaping our reality, our collective reality, I guess, in some way, so that it benefits everyone?
Yeah, wow, that's a big question. Yeah, to go back to kind of friendships and dynamics and say, you know, I think honesty is something I wanted to talk about, and the level of honesty in relationships is really essential. I think some of us, grow up with these quite surface level relationships where we're not really talking about what's actually going on for us or what we care about. And to some extent, that's fine. You know, if you've got a friend and you both enjoy football and you go and watch football, and that's great. You know, that's one relationship that will bring value to your life. But I think all of us need relationships where we can be honest about where we're at, about what's going on for us. And many of us don't have that. And I think that's a problem.
And is that something you see, I guess, quite often I'd love to just explore, I guess, generally the kind of archetypal problems that you see unfold in people's lives, because it's certainly foundational. I think generally, if we're not being honest, then how does everything else trickle down from that or up from that?
Yeah,
you know.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I guess. I mean, sometimes we don't realize we're not being honest. I think that's a really interesting place to start, is that perhaps if we grew up in a family that wasn't very straightforward, I'm hesitant to say this, but British culture is not, we're not known in Britain for being super straightforward. Politeness is kind of held in very high regard, and sometimes honesty is slightly under that politeness, you know, politeness over honesty. Yeah, honesty requires, it requires risk, you know, risking saying what's really happening, or how we're really feeling, or what we really would like. We're often taught to be accommodating to others. You know, how can I be accommodating to others? But if everyone's just trying to be accommodating to each other, no one's really asking, well, but what do I actually need? And what would I like to happen here? And what would I like this person to know?
I mean, in some ways, it's kind of the only thing that you can do is actually be honest about your own experience, because it's so difficult. It's already difficult to understand yourself. So to try and understand a different person who doesn't understand themselves is almost an impossible challenge. So yeah, you're right. It's like if everyone's playing this weird game of like reaching for something that they're not actually sure is the right thing to reach for, or take a moment to pause, I guess. Express how things are actually unfolding, and then see whether that does align. So it's like, it's not just you being honest, but it's like collectively we're trying to arrive at an honest characterization of our shared experience. I almost, in my mind, almost feels like I'd assume that honesty is a barrier as well as the underlying cause, I guess, of things going off course. Yeah.
I mean, particularly in relationships, whether that's romantic or friendships or family. Yeah, there's often resentments that build up because honesty is not present, or people are not saying what they really think or feel or want, or there are all kinds of assumptions being made, but there's not this honest communication. And so, yeah, things are going awry, and people are not on the same page necessarily. You know, one person is thinking this is happening, one person is thinking this is happening. But some things are really hard to be honest about. You know, it's hard when something feels petty, like I get really annoyed when you don't do this. It feels hard to say that, but if we don't say it, we still feel it. It's just not being expressed. And yeah, there's a danger in these silences. Yeah, these silent resentments that build up. Yeah,
because it's well, the image in my mind goes to a snowball, right? Or at least there's a framing which I've always quite enjoyed, which is try and cross the river while it's narrow.
Yes.
Because down the river, I mean, I think there's a lot of metaphors in life that a river can try and represent, and maybe one day I'll try and like assimilate all of them together. But certainly this one feels, you know, true for what we're talking about, but also just generally any sort of destructive habits, or, you know, often if there's something big, at one point it was small.
Yes, precisely.
People wait until it's big enough that it's a cause for concern, which just seems like counterproductive.
Yeah. And also, I guess the river, when it's narrow, to me is also when you're not heightened, when you're not really annoyed or really upset, to have some conversations, when the tone can be a bit lighter, when I guess to address things as they come up, really, to not wait until they become big, which again is hard to do and takes practice, and many of us are not practiced at it, and that's the problem. Is we didn't observe that in our families necessarily. We don't observe people talking honestly always. You know, there are luckily lots of examples of people who have and do, but that's something I'd love to see more of. And I think there's a danger of not wanting to offend, and not wanting to make a big deal, and not wanting to speak up for what we want, because that might inconvenience other people. but it offers this place of negotiation and finding a middle ground sometimes that benefits both people.
So maybe this would be a good time to touch on the cultural aspect, and I guess how that might differ to, you know, other chapters in your journey, other places that you've been, you know, with British culture having in some ways quite a distinct set of like characteristics when it comes to honesty, and the social dynamic of the UK is, you know, I guess somewhat familiar maybe to us.
Yeah.
But as I understand it, there are other cultures that might be familiar to you as well.
That's right. So yeah, strangely, I was born in America. My parents were temporarily living there, and I went back to live there as an adult in a slightly dramatic way. A relationship had ended, and I just was frustrated by British culture in a way. I thought, America is, it seems like American people are much more straightforward with each other. There are different expectations maybe. And so, I went to live in America. I was there for about 4.5 years. And I did find that people were less, there was this level of people being less fazed by people being direct. Yeah, there was a lot more, particularly in a workplace, there was a lot more directness. There was a lot less, would you mind if, you know, it was just,
classic.
It was
I think the word direct. Sorry is said more times in the UK than probably anywhere else.
Yeah. And it comes from a beautiful place often. You know, the intention is making people comfortable and keeping the peace and maintaining calm. But if that's the priority always, then we're not willing to rock the boat and be willing to have challenge and potentially conflict. And if we don't practice that, we don't know how to do that in a skillful way. Like any skill, you know, it requires a level of practice. So not that I've arrived there, but it's something I want to practice. Yeah.
It's just funny to think that there's a certain refreshing honesty that comes with the brashness that's often associated with with different cultures, I guess. And then, you know, obviously there's always the trade-off. It's like, you know, if you live in this calm, polite society, then it manifests in other ways. British and UK culture, I think, is just absolutely fascinating. Also, we get exposed to a lot of US culture just generally. Like, I wonder if UK culture has shifted as a result of not just globalization, but also specifically exposure to American culture, or just generally how American culture's influenced other places. Don't know. Maybe that's
it's a really interesting thought. And luckily the UK is a really multicultural place now, which is amazing. There's lots to learn from lots of different cultures and lots of delicious food to be eating from lots of different cultures.
So we've been talking about honesty, and I wondered if we could go into the other foundational or important aspects of establishing and maintaining a good relationship with other people, whether that is romantic or otherwise.
So I guess the next thing that's coming to mind is respect. You know, how essential respect is in relationships, both receiving respect and giving respect. And, you know, anytime you get people together, there's going to be difference. It's negotiating those differences. It's finding out who that other person is, what they value, what's going on for them, and how that mixes with what's going on for you and what you value and what comes up for you when they're around.
I've heard some people talk about how people are like responsible for their own, not just their own happiness, but like their own circumstances in a relationship. You know, I'm just going to park that. I don't even think I'd forgotten what I was going to say about it. But yes, respect is important.
And I think you're onto something there as far as the, you know, it's a very dangerous thing to look externally for our happiness, to be, you know, it's been said a lot that we're looking for these kind of Disney romances of like, you meet the handsome prince or the beautiful princess and you live happily ever after. And that's not how life is. So to just be very conscious that when you're not happy, it's very easy to project that and say, I'm not happy because you have done this, or you haven't done that, or this isn't happening in my life and it should be. But ultimately we're responsible for our reactions and for getting our needs met. Mm-hmm. We often want that to happen externally, or for people to be mind readers, or you know, it's we've been fed a lot of false ideas about romance and how smoothly things just play out, when actually, like a lot of things, it's work, and it's it is about uncomfortable conversations and comfortable conversations and fun and all of it together, the humanity of it.
I wondered if like as you're exploring what's going on in people's lives, how much of the support do you give is based on, I guess, what your understanding of a healthy relationship is, and how much of it is trying to get the other person to articulate what it is that they feel a relationship should be? And, you know, because I could imagine that that's maybe where there is things going wrong, is if there's like unhelpful assumptions or expectations. And I don't know, do you learn about what the archetypal good relationship is? Because it seems like that would be impossible to arrive at.
It's a great question, and my response is that, you know, I want to be discovering what that looks like for that person, for that client. I have my own ideas about what that looks like in my life and for me, but that might not be what they think or need. The only time I would challenge is if, you know, they're saying they want one thing and they're not. That's clearly not what's happening in their situation, or what is possible even, you know. Or that if they're expecting something that they're not willing to give as well. I think some of us fall into that, unfortunately, of wanting something from others and actually not giving that. It needs to be a pretty balanced dynamic.
So that kind of goes into the love language thing in my mind, because I didn't even know that I feel like I only came across that like a couple of years ago. Someone mentioned it. I was like, what the hell's that? What are love languages, and how do they play into all this?
Thank you for mentioning that. I think, that book saved my parents' marriage, I think, because
which book is this?
The 5 Love Languages.
Okay.
And
I didn't know there was a book on it. I thought it
was, Well, I don't think you need to read the book, but just having that general understanding that people give and receive love very differently sometimes, and somebody might be trying to give love in a particular way and it's just not being received that way. So from my memory, there's kind of practical love, which is things like doing the washing up for somebody, picking up the shopping. There's gift giving, so buying their favorite flowers or their favorite chocolate. There's quality time, which is one of mine. Is that spending time together that's dedicated to that other person, where there's not the distraction of everyday life. There's words of affirmation, which is really key for some people, that being seen and being encouraged. I think the physical touch.
Yeah, physical. I think is the last one.
That kind of speaks for itself. But the affection and different, you know, some people don't respond to some. For example, you might feel like gifts is a really important love language for you, and it's just not for that other person. That's just not how they grew up. They don't value that. But again, back to that discussion, if you don't have that discussion, you might be annoyed that somebody is not giving you gifts and they clearly don't love you. But that's not even on their radar. That's not how they have received love or want to give love. And so, yeah, getting clear on what matters to you.
Interesting. Yeah, I find this fascinating because some of these can become quite expensive.
Oh, yeah. There can also be small, you know. I think gift giving, for example, you know, that could be, that could be.
But it's expensive in the sense that you could be pouring money or time into something that it's not actually.
Oh, it's not what how they're receiving it.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
It's like your efforts are actually misallocated.
Yeah.
I guess. Which is a loss for both of you, really.
Exactly. Why it's such a great framework, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So does this sort of feature as part of the training and stuff as well, or?
It didn't for me. This is something I came across through kind of further reading and as I say, my parents, they went to couples counselling when I was younger, and this book was recommended to them, and it was a game changer.
Wow.
The real game changer.
I'd imagine it has been a game changer for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got honesty, respect. Any other big ones that come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think fun, you know, that might seem kind of obvious, but often when things are starting to break down, the fun and the lightness is missing in relationships. You know, life has got kind of mundane, or you've fallen into rhythms together that are a bit stagnant maybe. So yeah, whether that's together or separately, but just encouraging this fun and lightness in your life that can feed you and feed the relationship.
What kind of things would reignite that sense of fun and lighthearted play, or just the spark generally? It'd probably be a fair assumption that most people would think, okay, let's do something quite crazy and drastic. But what kind of small things could people do you think?
I guess I'm thinking for myself, it's kind of, noticing when there's a kind of heaviness and just joking more. You know, I'm doing that thing again. I'm doing that thing that I always do. Or you're doing that thing that you always do. Or, just mixing things up, you know. That could be buying a different meal to eat in the evening, or going to see a film that you haven't watched the trailer for, or you don't know anything about. Just adding a kind of a slight newness to your routine, I guess. And that will look different for different people. You know, fun to me might be different to fun for you, but
I do kind of love the idea of actually turning almost like the process of, I guess, reshaping your relationship into the fun aspect of it. There's like a win-win there, right? Yeah, if you're almost almost acknowledging the absurdity of like patterns of behavior that we fall into.
Yeah,
I think is actually quite fun for ourselves generally, like even outside of a relationship. Like, I think that there's something to be said about laughter and you being in touch with yourself in a pretty fundamental way.
Yeah, I mean, humans are weird, you know, we're weird creatures. We don't always do things that benefit us. We worry about things that never happen. There are all kinds of things that are interesting and funny about us. Yeah, Alain de Botton is somebody who really encourages this way of thinking in relationship, just this kindness to the other and to ourselves of like, aren't we funny?
Aren't we just?
Yeah.
So what is it that, I guess, if you think about in like the different sort of characteristics of modern society, are there any things that you find like worrying or challenging when it comes to, I guess, how they influence some of these things? Like the first thing that kind of comes to mind for me, at least, is, you know, the surge in online dating and things like this. I wonder if that changes the the expectations of what a relationship should be or how a relationship should start and other things, I guess, beyond online dating.
I guess thinking about the honesty and the respect, you know, honesty is not mandatory in online dating. There's lots of dishonesty that goes on, and or half truths or semi-truths
or well-crafted truths.
Yeah, exactly. It's difficult because how do you meet people? And so I really understand this, you know, this boom in online dating and this sense of wanting to get to know somebody a little bit from their profile before you meet them. But just really important to keep in mind, you're not really getting to know them. In a sense, you have to be in a room with somebody to really get to know who they are, in my opinion.
And to see the weirdness.
To see the weirdness and to see how they respond to things in the moment and how they, what their body language tells you about them. But from a respect perspective, I think, unfortunately, online dating, you know, we're not necessarily dating people within our who live in a radius of where we live. So if you suddenly decide you don't want to see somebody, you can, you know, this idea of ghosting, that you can just cut somebody off and never see them again. That I think there is a lack of, well, I've heard lots of stories anyway about a real lack of respect that can be there. Yeah, something that can feel quite intense and like it's going somewhere can just suddenly be severed, and
it's just like quite an abrupt end to the story.
Yeah, and no, you know, as far as respect for clear communication, that's not. It's possible to evade that with online dating. You can just not respond.
Wow.
Which is, it's really harsh.
It's very, very harsh. It must just, and it must, I think what's worrying about it is if it changes how you would act in a otherwise, well, quote unquote, normal situation. I appreciate that normal might actually be very different for lots of different people, but like the more traditional legacy way of, I guess, meeting people and ending relationship, but also still, I guess, seeing them. Or basically what I'm saying is, how do people's experiences of online dating, when, say, it goes wrong, or if it ends suddenly, and whatever that experience might be, how does that then potentially impact a normal situation that arises?
I guess what's coming to mind is that when we don't have clear communication, we just fill that space or that void with our own interpretations of why that person might not want to see us again, or why things have ended. Yeah, depending on the stories that are already there for us, we could just fill that space with our insecurity. Oh, they didn't like this about me. I shouldn't have said this, or lots of second guessing of self really goes on. From people I've spoken to anyway, about those abrupt endings, where there's not the honesty and there's not the integrity really of the other person to be clear about what's happened.
I'd love to, I guess, double click on that bit, which is like filling the space with your own uncertainty. Like, because it feels like assumptions are a useful thing, but also very often quite a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
And they lead to miscommunication. And yeah, I guess what is the impact that assumptions can have in a relationship? Bit of a vague question.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I guess, there's just stories really. If we make assumptions are just stories or a version of what we think might be happening, which is very rarely what is actually happening. You know, we make assumptions so that we can just have shortcuts and we can put things in tidy boxes. Oh, this must be this and this must be this. And the problem is so often that's about past experience. And so we carry that past experience forward with us in attempts to keep ourselves safe. Yeah, unfortunately, big sweeping statements about, men are this way or women are this way, or I am not capable of that, or whatever that story is limiting. and it limits the relationship, or it limits what we choose to do with our lives, or things we choose to say yes to, unfortunately.
I'll just pause and say I think that's an excellent articulation of that.
Ah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, that's just so interesting to think about, that they are just stories.
They are. And our lives are full of stories.
Yeah, they're full of stories, and they're full of really powerful stories, and stories that can really jar with other stories that are unfolding.
Yes. And again, just back to this communication. If we can say to somebody, this is what's playing out for me, this is what my assumption is here, then someone else can say, oh, that's not what my assumption is here. Or that's not what was going on for me, or that's not how I intended it, or, that kind of clarity of where both people are.
Okay, so how might we regain a sense of forward motion? And related to this, I'm wondering about people's appetite for risk in relationships. Yeah, I guess how does our appetite for risk in relationship influence our ability to move forward? Or just more generally, how do people regain a sense of forward motion?
One thing is getting clear on what do you want, and that changes. So that takes regular checking in and reevaluation. What is it that I want now? We all want different things when we're 20 to when we're 50, maybe. Yeah, being real with yourself about what is it that I want. And sometimes we're scared to do that because we're a bit scared of what we want sometimes. We're scared that we can't get that thing, or it's unrealistic for us, or who am I to want that, or people like me shouldn't want that. Whatever that story is. But I think that's a great way to move people forward is, okay, what do you want? And what are some steps to get you there? Like on a practical level, but also on an emotional level. How do you build your confidence to move in that direction? How do you practice that skill?
There's something there about, like, oftentimes I think what you want can be so heavily influenced by what you think you should want.
Yes.
For whatever reason, maybe this kind of comes back to the stories that we are exposed to, maybe believe in. So that becomes quite tricky, right? Because like if you're being as honest as you can in articulating what it is that you want, but what you want isn't really the best thing for you, or if it is just something that has been heavily influenced by external factors, that becomes quite tricky, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so maybe a good follow-up question is, why do I want that? And then maybe things will come to the surface of like, oh, I want that because my grandmother thinks that that's what I should do. But yeah, all of life is kind of trial and error, I find. Something comes to mind, you follow that and you learn along the way. And then you might realize, oh, that's actually not what I want. And so you change course. We've always got the option to change course. You thought it was this, but it's actually something slightly different to that. Yeah, it's just about keep checking in.
And actually just being, participating, I guess.
Yeah.
Experimenting, being open to the fact that you haven't got to figure it out and probably won't ever figure it out completely.
Yeah.
It's just like good course corrections along the way. Okay, so I guess just to try and tie a bow on the relationship theme, if you had to characterize what a meaningful relationship might be or feel like to someone.
I can only speak for myself. That will look different to different people. But for me, a meaningful relationship is one where back to the honesty and respect, that I feel I can be honest and I feel they're being honest with me, that I feel respected and I respect them. Where there's that fun element, I think that's necessary in a lot of relationships. Yeah, and where we can both bring to the relationship what we're thinking about, what themes are going on, what concerns there are, what we're excited about, what something we learned about or read about.
It's like a shared understanding, I guess.
Shared understanding, yeah. if possible, a shared experience of things, being out in the world rather than just sitting and contemplating, to also be out together and experiencing things together, so that you can be observing the same things and talking about the same things.
All right. So then zooming out even further, what would you consider to be the aspects of a meaningful life from your perspective?
So, existential kind of therapy talks about some key aspects to explore with clients. And one of them is meaning, where is meaning, and how do we create meaning? And this theory, from my understanding of that training, was that we create meaning. Nothing intrinsically has meaning.
Yep.
We just we are creating that all the time, and just noticing in ourselves what brings up a sense of meaning is different for different people. For me, meaning is about exploring life and exploring what it is to be human, and to support each other to be living more freely, to be living in a way that, is a bit lighter, where we're looking at what are the barriers in the way, what are the things that we've been carrying for a really long time that are not helpful.
So like the participation in your own exploration, I guess, like you're not only internally but externally. That's quite a nice way of thinking about it. So what about discussion? Because that's something that I think we clearly find some joy in, or there's something significant about discussion and in what we're both doing.
Yeah, I guess my understanding is we've always done it. We've always had discussions and told stories and explored how to do things well. And it's just what lights me up. It's what, that question of, well, what for you means that time just passes and you're not even aware of it. And for me, that's about discussion and learning from somebody else, and also sometimes being shocked by what by your own wisdom. Sometimes it's only when we're in discussion that we realize what we do know or what we do think. Get back to the counselling room. Sometimes it's essential to hear ourselves, to actually know what we think. Sometimes we only know when someone asks us the question. Yeah, but there's a quote that I love, something along the lines of, reaching no absolutes in which to rest, we're always nearer by not standing still. So, there are no absolutes really in life. We're always just
there's no destination
to figure it out. And
I love that.
There's not necessarily just absolute truths. Where science is always finding out new things. There's always more to add to the story and more to add to the discussion, which is a bit daunting actually for some people, unless you learn to relax into that. The unknown is scary, and to not have control. Lots of people have this wish to kind of control things as much as they can, with the understanding that will bring safety, and it doesn't, unfortunately, often bring safety. The safest place to be sometimes is to be somewhat surrendered to the unknown. That might sound a bit woo-woo, but
no, I think that it makes complete sense. Control can be intoxicating. I guess you can fool yourself into thinking you can control quite a lot, and then if you feel as though the story is moldable, then it puts quite a lot of pressure on yourself to turn it into the story that you want to live. You're bound to be disappointed in some way. And it's definitely not to say that we shouldn't be, active participants in our own lives, and we shouldn't be, incorporating routines that are healthy for us, and finding out what makes sense for us, and living in a way that has some level of structure and control. But life doesn't always go to plan, and so there's a necessity for flexibility in that. Do you think about story often? Do you think about your story or the broader story, society unfolding? Is that like a way that you frame the world?
So, I mean, definitely my own story. I think we are all, in a sense, product of our story. And
the object of it as well.
The object of it, yeah. And of, intergenerational stories. I am me because of who my mother was and is, and she is because of who her mother and father were, etc. We're influenced by multiple generations, as well as culture and so many influences that we need to kind of think about as part of our story. Otherwise, we're not aware of what's influenced us.
It's fascinating to think that, I guess, part of understanding your own narrative that's unfolding in your own head is actually understanding everyone else's narrative or just the broader narrative of humanity. Because as much as the answers are within you, there are actually potentially completely external from you. It's quite nice actually to think that you are who you are as much because of your own actions as because of everything that's just happened before.
Yeah. Well, I think, that's what I love about counselling is I think if you can see clearly what's influenced you, then you can be choosing more consciously. I think so much goes on unconsciously that we think, but it isn't unless we see it clearly. I think it's also a fun experiment to think, well, what do I want my story to be? What has my story been so far, and what do I want it to be going forward, and how do I influence that? Not that we can just wish that our story looked a certain way and then it suddenly appears in that way, but we do have influence and we can be aiming towards certain things and shifting.
Yeah, and I feel like if you can craft a story that simultaneously benefits yourself as well as everyone around you, then that's brilliant. Like if you can almost arrive at a story together, again, kind of going back to a relationship, if there's a story that you both, or if there's a movie that you both want to watch unfold.
Yeah.
You're both the directors in a way.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the topic of neurodiversity, which is something that you're involved in and I would love to know more about. So I guess the first question is, what is neurodiversity? Why is it important? Why should we be thinking about it?
Neurodiversity is about difference. It's about brains working in different ways. There have been neurodiverse people on the earth for hundreds of years, probably, and what's really essential is just to bring more understanding to that, really, and to bring more patience to that. I think there are heartbreaking stories of people who are treated differently, are judged, ridiculed, made to feel less than. That's because of behavior that's not necessarily their choice. It's just how their brain works. So I'm part of NSEC, which is the Neurospicy Entrepreneur Club.
Great name.
Really great name. Yeah. Started by Jemima Wilcox, who's a great person, very fun to be around. She's a neurodiversity advocate. Neurodiversity is in discussion everywhere at the moment, it feels like. The core of it really for me is about accepting difference and acknowledging that we don't all work the same way, making adaptations so that we can all be working well. I guess to say why it's important for me is, so I had an assessment about 2 years ago now that showed dyslexia, which is why I went for the assessment, because I kind of knew that that's what had been going on for me throughout my life, but it never had a kind of formal, I'd never had a formal assessment. And as a lot of people are saying when they have these assessments, there's this moment of, okay, that's what I've been dealing with. It's not that I'm stupid or slow or, all of these labels and stories, is that my brain works a bit differently, and I can work with that now. I can bring less self-judgment and build more strategies. I can learn from other people who also live with this and make the best of it. So that's been part of my journey, is realizing, okay, I found that job really difficult. That involved endless paperwork and very little interaction with other people and precision of wording and spelling, because that was a dyslexic's worst nightmare.
And you managed to survive.
Well, not for very long, actually. No, very short-lived, that job. But the story at the time was that there was something fundamentally wrong with me, that I wasn't doing it right. Everybody else seemed to be doing it fine. I just wasn't trying hard enough, or I hadn't found the right formula. It was just a really bad fit for me. And I think fit is something that's, important for us all to consider. What's a good fit for me? Mm-hmm. And that's less about right and wrong and should and shouldn't. It's just what's a good fit? What feels like a good fit?
Yeah, it almost feels like shifting your own perception as like inwardly facing, as well as your perception of other people, from, I guess, neurodeficiency to neurodivergence. It must have been such a powerful revelation. But in some ways, like, I guess where my mind goes, it's quite tragic to think of how far in people's lives sometimes that can be.
Yeah.
It's encouraging to see that there's more conversation around it now, and that I'm sure there's more practical things happening earlier on in people's lives. But it's crazy to think that you could probably reach old age and still not know.
Yeah.
Maybe be even more reluctant to seek that kind of assessment, or to like believe it.
Absolutely. And I mean, some people maybe have quite a robust sense of self, and they, it doesn't matter either way. They just feel, well, this is who I am and this is what I work with and I have strategies. But for a lot of people, it's, there've been these repeated messages in life that they're not doing it properly. They're not, that they need to be fitting in with a neurotypical way of doing things that just feeds this sense of, not being normal, or not being what other people were hoping for. And that's just so undermining. It just can really limit what people think is possible for them.
It's like you don't really have the access to the right manual for your brain.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, you're trying to live by a manual that doesn't fit your model of brain.
What's crazy is that like you don't get given a manual at the beginning. You're like crafting the manual yourself. And in crafting it, you're massively influenced by like the mean of the population. That just makes it really difficult, because you almost need to take like an incredibly personalized approach to crafting a manual for people so they can understand how to best leverage their skills. But then the feasibility of that is really difficult. Again, it kind of comes back to what questions you should be asking yourself.
Also makes me think about the workplace too, though. There are these kind of standard rules in a workplace which don't work for everyone. And I understand most workplaces don't want to tailor a job to the person. And that's not always possible. But I think there is a kind of crisis in a lot of workplaces of people not putting up with things that don't work for them anymore, and workplaces needing to be a bit more flexible and needing to make some more accommodations for people so that they get the best out of everyone.
But what strikes me about it is oftentimes the measures that you would need to implement to benefit someone who has certain neurodivergences tend to be ones that actually benefit the broader population.
Yes, sir.
Then it becomes a no-brainer, surely.
I know. That's what's wild about it, you know. Needing more breaks. We could all use, you know, the option to have another break. That's good for everyone.
Yeah, the option, absolutely. So it's like, again, it's about freedom.
Yeah.
Or control, I guess, really is the thing there. So how is society adapting? How are our attitudes shifting? What's the progress that you can see at the moment?
I guess, yeah, the fact that it's being talked about so much more is great, you know, from the perspective of learning and awareness. Yeah, understanding what people need and what behaviours could show that something is about neurodiversity rather than about something else. You know, it's back to this assumptions thing. We make a lot of assumptions about someone's behaviour, and there could be multiple reasons why somebody behaves in a certain way, and we're responsible for our behaviour. I'm not saying we should excuse behaviours that don't work for people, or that, you know, things shouldn't be highlighted if they're a problem. But yeah, just great that these discussions are happening and there's more understanding about characteristics, I guess.
Yep. Again, it kind of feels like it comes back to discussions as the first good step.
Yeah, because somebody, you know, autism, for example, there's a spectrum, and, you know, one person with autism is different from another person with autism. It's back to that discussion of, okay, what does that person need, and what does their life look like?
I was wondering if there could be like a tangent to community. So I guess like understanding a bit more about NSEC and the community that's built around it, and I guess what value community brings in that kind of context.
Yeah. Well, I know for me, NSEC has been a place where I feel like I can just be myself. You know, I can, and that, you know, that's what all of us want, really, is a space where we can just be ourselves. And there's this term that's used in many contexts, but masking, that's often talked about with neurodiverse communities, where you're masking some of your, I guess some people would say symptoms or manifestations of your diverse brain. And you're trying to either repress them or mold yourself to be more socially acceptable. And so spaces like NSEC are, you know, you're encouraged to unmask, you're encouraged to be yourself, to fidget if you need to get up, to leave the room if you need to. Just encouraged to not be conforming in the same way, and not to be considering what do other people need from me, but what do I need right now.
It's beautiful that there's an avenue for that kind of expression, and embracing the differences. Yeah. It's also interesting though that, I guess, thinking about community in the sense of you can obviously be influenced by you can be influenced by community, right? Or like big collectors of people in some way, or like this overarching narrative. It's interesting to think that you can be simultaneously part of a community and also feel like very, very individual, very yourself. Yeah. So yeah, I just love the fact that you are being brought together by the fact that you are individual.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's the best balance, really, is when you're part of a group and you're celebrated for who you are as an individual. You're not celebrated because you are you're celebrated because you are Emily.
Yeah. Awesome. I guess, what kind of things have you like changed in your life as a result of it? Like, have there been like small or big things that you've changed just like practically to try and like, I don't know, make better use of your brain?
Yeah, I think I know that I can't read for long periods of time. You know, I listen to a lot of audiobooks now rather than trying to read physical books. I read paperwork usually first thing in the morning when I have a bit more capacity, brain energy. And I'm just kinder to myself. I think that's the biggest part is when I'm struggling with something, when I spell a word really randomly, there's a lot less shame about it than there used to be. I can laugh more about it rather than feeling shame.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like the revelation allowed you to not only change your life in a practical way, but also just like completely shift the story again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that quite a sudden thing as well?
No, that took time. And I think that's a common story for a lot of people who, get new knowledge about themselves, is there's a period of adjustment. And sometimes for people, anger, you know, how has this not been picked up before? How have I lived with this frustration with myself for so long without realizing that I'm not just a bad person, that I have legitimate struggles that other people don't have. Yeah, it's definitely a process.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for being here. And also, I think one of the themes that kind of is overarching for me is, you know, the importance of discussion in the pursuit to understand and see the world through someone else's eyes. And I'm glad that we could have this discussion. I'm glad that I could see the world through your eyes for a moment. And I guess thinking about the story, I'm excited to see how our stories unfold.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you so much for your time.
No,
and
at all.
It was great to speak to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I love. This is what we both love. So yeah, what a great way to spend a Sunday.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If you're curious to learn more about the pieces we've created in response to this discussion, or you'd like to explore the full archive of pieces on our website, you can find a link in the description. We'd love to know whether any of the pieces resonated with you and why that might be. Finally, we'd like to thank you for tuning in to the NAİMİ STUDİO podcast and for supporting our mission to help people cultivate meaning through creativity. Lots of love, and we'll see you later.